Hello everyone, I hope you've been having a great spooky season. Today I am going to take you through the process of coloring along with me on my Color Your Own Oracle cards, which I created for my Patreon for the month of October. I chose the little toad, as toads are my favorite. I'm going to be treating this coloring card just like I would any other painting, because I want to show everybody what it's like to get these handmade pages from me and the durability of them and paintability of them, which is a question that I get asked pretty often. Can I paint on these? What kind of mediums can I use? And I would say you could use just about any medium. I use a pretty heavy cardstock to print these on. Today I'm going to be using Stuart Simple's watercolor palette, which I am blown away by the colors on this palette and the paintability of the colors in this palette. I think it's probably one of my favorite mini palettes, at least this is a mini palette to me, that I've ever gotten, and I thought it might be kind of fun to include a supply that was at a price point that is pretty obtainable for everybody. I'm also going to be using some pretty small brushes for this painting today. That one's going to be my main brush. And I'm just going to start adding my base layers here. I like to layer my watercolors. One of the things I really enjoy about the particular type of ink that I use to print these is you can paint right over it. It's not going to bleed, it's not going to run, and you don't really have to color inside the lines, and you might actually see me not doing that a whole bunch today. I am by nature kind of meticulous, so I am going to try to color inside my lines as much as possible, but it's okay if you don't and if I don't. I think one of the coolest things about coloring pages, for me anyway, is that they allow me to get my ideas out and maybe experiment, try new techniques or new color combinations that I might not feel comfortable using on a piece that was, say, going to go be in a gallery or maybe was part of client work for me. So working on my own coloring pages is sort of a way for me to decompress, and I know a lot of other people find it very relaxing to be able to work on something like this too. When I imagined this little toad, I saw him sitting there on his pumpkin under one of those classic autumn skies with little ghosts and little moths. I think that this color combination, especially here in the Midwest, is one that I always look out for this time of year. And here you're going to see me use a color that I'm actually going to paint over later, but this sort of orangey yellow is going to give this foliage over here in this side of this painting a little more depth. Even though it's small, we can still add a lot of details like this, and I think it's fun to layer things because then you can add different gradients of color and shadowing. Makes it a lot simpler to do that, and also it makes it a little more forgiving if you make a mistake. And now I'm going to start bringing in some of my darker, more vivid greens for our little toad's body. At this point, I have added quite a bit of water to this page, and it has still not started buckling or bending, even though it is still very small. So again, this is just a really great example of kind of how much grief you can give these pages before they start to misbehave for you. About 2 years ago, I actually went through a really long process of finding just the right paper to print these coloring pages on, because I wanted to make sure that whether I was using them to get my ideas out, just experiment, or they were going to go into the hands of my fans who would want to color on them, that these pages could take just about any medium within reason that you could put down on them. I just couldn't in good conscience have my paper falling apart on myself or others trying to just have a good time while they're coloring. And here I'm going to come in and start adding that green over that sort of yellow color that we were talking about earlier. And see how it kind of blends so that you get both of those colors at the same time? I really love that effect. It's one of my favorite things about watercolors, doing those light glazes to get a more larger depth of color, if you will. Originally, I had hoped to paint all 5 of these oracle cards on live sessions, but this month has just been so tremendously busy that I could not find a time that would be convenient for me to paint and that would have worked for the most broad viewership possible. So instead, I have made this video, but in the future, I am considering doing some live sessions, either through my Patreon or a Discord, or even just here on YouTube or any of the other platforms that I'm on. One of the reasons that I actually started creating these coloring pages was to begin doing sort of like create with me hours digitally, so that people could come color along with me and make things their own way and share things and maybe make some new friends in the process. And that is still a little dream that I am dreaming, and I am trying to figure out the best way possible to do that. So if anybody has any ideas on how to make that more obtainable, you should totally drop it in the comments or send me a message on any of the platforms that I'm on. I think if I could give anybody one piece of advice if they were going to paint these, is to be sure to grab yourself one of those tiny brushes so that it can handle all of those tiny details that you might want to add or get into all of those little spaces. I decided to break out my favorite special watercolor set to add a little bit of the metallic to the toad's eyes. I don't know if you have ever personally met a toad, but if you ever get the chance to, you should totally take a look at their little eyes. They're this really vivid gold color, and I've always thought they were really, really cool. If you couldn't tell by now, I am a huge fan of Culture Hustle's art materials and Stuart Semple, and I will have a discount code in the description of this video for anybody that's interested in trying them out. And I cannot say enough good things, especially about the paint that I'm using and this ink. I love that it dries matte. It makes it really easy to do details like this. There's no worry about, is it going to be too see-through, or is it going to make my artwork shiny? I like a nice matte finish on all of my detailing, so I just thought I would throw that out there in case anybody's interested. I used to use gel pens for this, but I am just totally hooked on this white and black ink. It is one of my favorite things in my whole studio. These coloring pages are a really nice way for me to remind myself to not take my own art too seriously and to just have fun and not worry about planning out my colors or the future of my paintings, and just kind of go for it. And I think that's one of my biggest goals with these, is to inspire others who maybe don't feel so artistic to pick up some colored pencils or even some paints and try coloring or making some art for themselves. For many years, a lot of my fans had asked me to please turn my artwork into coloring pages, and I was really scared too, because there are a lot of really not so cool things that can happen with your art when you just leave it available like that on the internet. And that unfortunately did happen to me earlier this year, and it happened to me for the very first time. And these are actually some of the very first coloring pages I've made since having to deal with that debacle. And it feels really good to be making these again, and I really hope that everybody enjoys them as much as I enjoyed making them. It can be really discouraging to have difficulties like that as an artist, and it definitely did shut me down for a little while because I was so afraid to share any of my work. And now here I am making some of my very first YouTube videos with more of my coloring pages. So don't let one bad thing or bad person stop you from doing what you love. A couple of months ago, I actually stopped posting pretty much entirely because of that situation. And it took a couple of my really close friends kind of cornering me and going, hey, what are you doing? And when I explained to them what had happened, they were incredibly supportive and understanding, but they were pretty firm in getting me back to making art and trying to make YouTube videos, which is something I've wanted to do for a really long time, and I'm super glad I listened. And now it is time for one of my favorite parts of any painting, and that is getting it off of my illustration board. That peel and reveal is always so satisfying. The kind of nice thing about this heavier paper that I'm using for these coloring pages is it is washi tape friendly. You can use painter's tape with it, and it should come up pretty easily. Here is the Enchanted, all finished. This turned out even better than I had planned, and I'm really, really stoked about sharing my coloring pages with the world again. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see where my creativity takes me next, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And as always, friends, stay curious, stay creative, and keep shining bright. I'll see you in the next masterpiece.